In today's episode, I bring back my good friend and fellow osteopathic colleague, Kevin Longpré. We discuss the state of affairs in Canada at this time in regards to mandated injections, injection clinics being set up in our children's schools, people's jobs being threatened, what we can do, and what it means to follow your inner compass. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. One thing I wanted to talk about at the beginning here, just before we get into the show, is around the immune system. So you've heard lots about this over the last while, but I want to fine tune a couple of things that I think are really important. So this past year and a half has brought a ton of awareness back to health, immune system, resilience, how do we fortify our body, all of these different things. And so some of the big nutrient ones that I think have been more attention to than ever has before, which I think is actually really beneficial, is some of our key nutrients. So tons of information around things like vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin A, zinc, quercetin, magnesium. So these would be things that I incorporate on a pretty regular basis into my lifestyle because I know most people are deficient in them, including myself, even when I've tested myself. So, and I eat a healthy, clean diet. So a lot of times people think that if you just eat a healthy lifestyle, if you lead a healthy lifestyle and you eat a healthy diet, that usually everything is going to be fine. Now, that will definitely improve your chances. The only way you're really going to know is if you periodically get your levels checked and see. So when I'm running panels for people, I will often be checking a lot of these key nutrients to see if you are in a optimal zone. Got to remember, there's a big difference between a large normal reference range and an optimal health zone that you want to be in. This is where healthy people tend to live. This means that you've got adequate amounts of these nutrients to play the roles in the hundreds of different reactions that they take place in. So when we look at a lot of nutrients, it's important to remember that for the most part, we should be getting our nutrients from our plants and from our foods and from the soil. The problem is that particularly with minerals is that the soil is depleted of a lot of minerals. So even if you're having healthy plants that should have adequate amounts of those minerals in them, if the soil does not have a lot of the minerals in them, the plant will not magically make a lot of those minerals. And so things like zinc and magnesium, for example, are notoriously low on large percent of the population, and they play into literally hundreds and hundreds of different reactions in the body. So if they are low, you're going to have a hard time being able to manage all of the different areas in the body that require them as cofactors in the smooth running of different reactions in the body. So I check them periodically. I think it's a good idea to get them checked, and then you need to make sure that you are using the right test. So just go to my website at drjasonloken.com, download the free ebook of the top 10 labs, and then you'll learn a little bit more about that. You can request from your healthcare practitioner run certain tests. Depending on where you are, you can often run them yourselves if you're in the US. So check them out and then see for yourself. Take control of your health, find out where you are, and then you know what to do to make some of these differences. Now, one of the other things, though, that I think is really important when it comes around health is not just our nutrient level, right? Because outside of what their nutrient levels are, it also impacts how do we absorb, what are we taking in from the environment, what are we taking in from supplements, and then is it actually making a difference? So it is important to periodically check to make sure that you are then making the changes required. There's one thing I think about, you want to feel different, and then you also want to be able to measure it if you can objectively, so you compare those two things. Do I feel different? And then is it working because I can see that it is objectively showing me that things are changing? That's the way we can kind of keep honest with ourselves around everything. The other area around health that I think is really important is detoxification. Now, lots of people are probably aware of detoxification. The body is constantly undergoing detoxification processes. So we've got certain organ systems that are very important in the detoxification process. So things like our lungs and our colon and our kidneys and our skin, and particularly our liver. But think of it this way. Anything that is toxic to our body, for the most part, has to be filtered through the liver and broken down and made less toxic so that we can then excrete it out through the kidneys and get rid of it. We are under a ton of load just living in this world, and this has been exponentially increasing over the years. And so if we're looking at it from a physical perspective, think of it as things like insecticides and pesticides and herbicides and what gets sprayed in the air and what's in the water. What do we put on our face? How do we wash ourselves? What do we wash our clothes with? all of the different things that then act like disruptors for hormones like bisphenol A, things that we put in our mouth and cavities that we get fixed. All of these different things, I think, add different layers that build us up eventually until we hit our threshold. So I think of detoxification like that cauldron's just gradually bubbling up until it eventually spills over. Our body often needs to do things to clear it back down so that we've got more resilience before we hit our threshold. And a lot of times I'll find people will have any array of symptoms. So whether they're, for me, it used to be allergies. My allergies used to be constantly over the top. I had hay fever, I had chronic asthma, I had chronic nasal congestion, a whole ton of problems with that. Lots of anaphylaxis as well, right up until I was in my mid-20s when I actually saw a naturopathic doctor and got so much stuff on track. And a lot of this stuff just gradually disappeared as I lowered the overall burden of what was going in my body. Now, this also incorporates foods that don't do well for you, you might be sensitive to, you might be allergic to. And then the whole other area, that's a whole other conversation, is looking at the mental toxicity, the emotional toxicity, the spiritual toxicity that we are under too. So how do we talk to ourselves? What emotions are we surrounded in? What is the environment that we are allowing into our field? All of these things are very key and affect our overall health and wellness and our resilience. And in the next series that is coming up very soon, in October, is all going to be around energy, frequency, vibration, magnetics, the next era of healthcare. And you're going to see that this area basically dictates everything below it. And I think it's going to be incredibly eye-opening and very fascinating about this sort of unseen world that directly affects so many things in our bodies. Now, when we get into detoxification, when fall is generally a perfect time to detox. So when we think about detoxification, usually spring and fall are great times to do this. Now, I personally now, just depending on where you live, I just listen to my body. If my body feels like it needs to detoxify, or I just get the inkling to do that, then I will run through it. And there's an array of different ways that you could do it. You can check out lots of stuff, anywhere from a week to a month, however you want to do it. Lots of different programs around that. But I would say some of the key things are, from a physiological standpoint, would be supporting detoxification pathways. Now, one of the ways that we've traditionally done that is through a lot of herbs. That is a very eclectic, traditional way that was used to support our bodies. Now, one of the things I think is really fascinating that I want to show you here is some of the research around dandelion. Dandelion has traditionally been used for eons as a benefit for tons of different things. So we look at something like dandelion. Dandelion has tons of different health benefits. So I'm just going to scroll through here. I mean, there's links to all of this stuff. It's easy to find information on all the benefits of dandelion, but outside of it being highly nutritious, it's got tons of different nutrients in it like A, C, K, B vitamins, folate, vitamin E, everything. It's loaded. It's got lots of soluble fiber. So really healthy that way, but it's also a potent antioxidant. It can help with inflammation, possibly. It can aid blood sugar control, may reduce cholesterol, lower blood pressure. I mean, the list goes on and on. And we often think of this as being a primary one for healthy liver detoxification. We also use it even for weight loss a lot of times, because a lot of times when people actually store extra weight, they're actually need to detoxify. And when we are storing extra weight, there's also a lot of water weight that gets stored. If we are carrying a larger burden of toxicity, then a lot of times that gets stored. A lot of toxins are fat soluble. They actually get stored in fat. We need to actually release some of the fat to get rid of some of these stored toxins in the body. So many different benefits, okay, including healthy digestion, treating constipation, immune system benefits, tons of stuff. So when I'm looking at certain products that I would want to incorporate, dandelion would be a part of that. Now recently, there's actually been research looking at dandelion specifically in blocking the interaction with ACE2 cell surface receptors and SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. So this is still an area that is needing to be researched more. This has been done in vitro, not in vivo, meaning it is not done in people and live. It's done in petri dishes, and they're showing this. But this is where all research begins. And I think this is really important because this is going to be something that's going to blow up. I think there's going to be a lot of research around this because personally, I feel that everything we need is provided in nature. And so all of these different plants are incredibly powerful. And as we learn more and more about them, we see how they've got so many different benefits. So this study here was showing at the end, it said infection of the lung cells using SARS-CoV-2 spike pseudotyped lentivirus particles were efficiently prevented by the extract, and so was virus-triggered pro-inflammatory interleukin-6 secretion. Modern herbal monographs consider the usage of this medicinal plant as safe. Thus, the in vitro results reported here should encourage further research on the clinical relevance and applicability of the extract as prevention strategy for SARS-CoV-2 infection. This is really exciting. So a plant that we have used for millennia is now also being shown to be beneficial, potentially for this pandemic that we're going through. This could be another piece of the puzzle that may be incorporated. From my perspective, I already incorporate dandelion at different times just as an overall health benefit for things like blood sugar and weight and detoxification processes. So it's like, it's already got so many benefits. If that's one more potential benefit on top of it, to me, it's a no-brainer. And another specific part of the detoxification process that I think is really unique and really powerful is something called solar plast. And this is a specific chloroplast complex. It's this extraction from organic spinach leaves. It's been enhanced through this specific enzymatic process that literally captures the power of protoplasts. Capturing these protoplasts is really unique because what a protoplast does is it essentially absorbs light energy from the sun. So it is literally like taking in light energy. Now, outside of all of the physical benefits you get from that, because this unique extraction helps to support the whole glutathione pathway. So you get your glutathione peroxidase and reductase and superoxide dismutase and N-acetylcysteine and all of these things to support that major process of detoxification. But you also get this, literally this light extraction. And this is something that I'm super curious about. Now, this has been shown already to be supportive as a nootropic for brain function. Now, what I'm really excited about is this idea that we can actually fill our bodies with an extraction of light energy. And from the new series that we are going to be doing on the energy, frequency, vibration, magnetics, I think that we are going to see how we can get a different level of information, a different level of health because of the frequency that is actually emitted through the capture of actual light energy. So now this is something that I'm really fascinated by, and I think is going to be a whole next level of incorporating health into the body. Now, if you'd like to learn more about that, go check out Ascent Nutrition. I'm going to put a link in the show notes where you can use the promo code Dr. Loken, that's capital DRLOKEN. Go check out their Peak Liver Detox. I will put a link to that product. This is the product that has the dandelion. It's also got other herbs in there like artichoke and milk thistle, all stuff to support liver detoxification pathways. But it has this unique constituent of solar plast. And that's the thing that I'm super excited about. So this combination could be a very important part of your overall detoxification pathway. And the final thing that I want to mention that I think is incredibly important tied with detoxification and immune system is making sure that you manage free radical load. Now, we talked about that a little bit tied with the Peak Liver Detox from Ascent Nutrition. But the other thing that is really important is something like C60. So C60 is carbon 60. It is that incredibly powerful antioxidant. Antioxidants will scavenge free radicals. And you got to remember, from a natural health perspective, free radical damage is a cornerstone to almost all illness. It tends to trigger inflammation. It can affect mitochondrial function. And when those things go down, the list of different problems that develop in the body just keep going up. So when we can address that at that core fundamental level of getting at lowering oxidative burden, working towards trying to minimize inflammation as best we can by decreasing what we are taking in, being aware of our thoughts, our emotions, our diet, what we're putting on our bodies, all of those types of things. So we lower the load and then we support our body to try to quench some of these free radicals that are moving around through the body. When we can do that, I think that we open the doors to optimal health. So if you haven't had a chance to check out C60 yet, check the link below. It will take you to C60 from Purple Power, and use the promo code DRLOKEN, all in capitals, and you will get 15% off your order. And the other link in the notes below will be for Ascent Nutrition. You can click that link and use the promo code DRLOKEN in capitals, and you will get 10% off your order. Now, in this episode today, I bring back my good friend, Kevin Longpré. And Kevin did an episode with me a while back where we chatted about COVID and just what was going on from a clinical perspective. Now what's going on is all of the stuff around mandates and around you need to get your vaccine or else you're going to get fired. Whether you've been working in a career for 20 or 30 years or in a job and your employer is now saying, sorry, by September 23rd or by October 15th, this is the deadline. If you get it, then great. If you don't get it, then you have to leave. I have had dozens of emails from patients over the last while asking me, what do I do? Can I get an exemption? Can I get a medical exemption, a religious exemption? Is there a way out of that? What can I do? Now, I'm not talking about to people on whether or not they should or shouldn't get the vaccine. I personally believe that is an absolute personal choice. I have my own feelings on that. It works for me and for my family. For you, what I think is important is that you need to figure out first where things actually sit within inside of you. Be very clear with that. Sometimes we need to slow things down and get into a more relaxed state of being rather than being in a stressed place. We don't want to make decisions from a high place of stress and worry. We need to slow things down, get in nature, go for a walk, do meditation, do something that gets you back down. Go and download the free Accessing Your Heart's Wisdom MP3 from my website at drjasonloken.com. That will help you get into the right physiological state to make proper decisions. But in this episode, we talk about all of this stuff because this is going on for us. It's going on for tons of patients. So we're going to give you some updates on what's happening in Canada right now specifically. We're going to talk about the whole scenario of forced injections or losing your job. And we're going to talk about some of the suggestions and updates that lawyer from Canada, Rocco Gilati, has talked about. We'll share some of his information. We also talk a little bit about what's going on in the schools, and they are going to be setting up vaccine clinics in the schools. And whether you're okay with that or not, you need to make certain decisions. And what are some of the options? And what are we doing? That sort of stuff. And then at the end, we really want you to really dialing into that inner sense of knowing and then living in alignment with that knowing. I feel like that is one of the main things that is going on at this point in time from more of a metaphysical, spiritual perspective, outside of all of the chaos that's taking place. I think we are all being asked to listen to ourselves. This is the whole concept of sovereignty and self-authority, and really live from that place of inner knowing. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Send me back some comments. Let me know other things you would like to know. We are getting prepped now for this series that will be coming up in October on energy, frequency, vibration, magnetics, the next era of healthcare. We've got an incredible lineup coming. So it's going to be a really fascinating series. And I feel like it is literally going to show us what the next era of healthcare is going to look like and how we can really take care of ourselves, build resilience, and fortify our body. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Okay. Bye-bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health podcast. And today I bring back my good buddy, Kevin Longpré. So we've had Kevin on this show a little while back. Not sure how many, maybe 15 episodes back, something like that, 16, somewhere back in there. I'll put up our old episodes so people can grab that. But we talked a little bit more about COVID just from our experience and being practitioners. Kevin's a osteopathic manual practitioner in Quebec. He's also an athletic therapy, runs a really busy, successful practice out that way. We worked together for quite a while back in the day and kind of reconnected over all of this a little while ago. So I wanted to bring Kevin on and sort of talk about what is going on right now, kind of in the world, but specifically in Canada. And when I talk about exemptions for some of the vaccine mandates that are coming out and the coercions that are happening and stuff around the kids. So we just want to have a bit of a discussion and give you our point of view on where we're at and what I think is going to be most supportive. So Kevin, welcome back, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Always good to be here. It's crazy times, I tell you. It has been something else here in Quebec. Mind you, I think a lot of the provinces are going through the same thing. You being obviously out west until recently, it was a little bit more slack there than, in Alberta it was anyways.
Yeah,
But
when we were in Ontario, it was really intense, and then
yeah,
we moved out to Vancouver Island, and
yeah.
it was definitely more mellow on Vancouver Island. But now I don't think it really matters where you are. It seems like they're all
Well,
kind of
look,
taking their
so
turns as far as how strict they're getting with
good
everything.
point. You're looking at the premier of Alberta, right?
Yeah.
Coming out and not long ago saying how didn't know what a vaccine passport was, but he knew it was illegal, and now he just passed it. So
It seems like it doesn't make any difference what people say. Oh, it's the same thing with Doug Ford. Doug Ford did basically the same thing. It's a hard no, a hard no. Well,
yeah,
that seemed to turn pretty quick.
sure, yeah.
So
So yeah, we could see where unfortunately where things are going. It seems to be escalating in terms of like right now for us in Quebec and for most of Canada, especially being in the health field, is the this October 15th deadline of mandating vaccination for healthcare workers. Um, there seems to be some slight fine print in Quebec where it's not absolutely sure whether massage therapy, osteopaths, and I think even naturopaths fit into that mold due to the fact that we pay tax. So most healthcare workers, like physiotherapists, chiropractors, don't pay any tax. So we're not in the same category. Anyway, we'll see where that goes. I'm pretty sure they'll do something to throw us back in there. But for now, we're kind of in limbo. So I don't know if I'll be treating many people after the 15th.
well, or you just end up doing it in a different way because I mean I think that's what everybody's sort of waiting for right now. I mean I've been getting a lot of emails from patients from many different areas that are all on the list for the vaccine mandatory vaccines. And
Mm-hmm.
so we wanted to talk a little bit about that because I mean I hear you, there's a lot of huge amount of fear going on, there's a lot of frustration. If you fall into the category of not wanting to be vaccinated and you're getting a mandated or you're being coerced to do it, or you're going to lose your job that you've had for 20 or 30 years, yeah, I get it. It's a stressful time.
Yeah,
And ultimately, I mean, from my perspective here, still, none of this is completely legal yet, anyways.
it's actually criminal. What people don't realize that right now, obviously the mandates they're talking about are decrees, right? So
Mhm.
the nothing's gone through legislation yet. That's why they keep extending the Emergency Act. In Quebec, every 10 days, Legault is extending the Emergency Act just to continue to have authorization to say we need to do X, Y, Z, when in reality, if people just didn't listen, it would be done because there's no legality to it at all. Hence the
Mhm.
reason people getting fines and all these things for being in gyms and for not abiding to what they're saying is basically being thrown out in court.
Yeah, if it
But
actually challenge it, if you actually challenge any of the tickets, I don't think one of them is actually stuck.
not that I've heard, no, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that was even what you're saying about the Emergency Act, because I was just going to share my screen here because
Mhm.
this was interesting too. This literally just came out today, I think. So, because basically the Pfizer Moderna COVID-19 vaccines get full Health Canada approval and they're under new names. So they are now received the full rubber stamp after receiving full Health Canada approval for anyone aged 12 and older on Thursday. So that's
Interesting.
really that's really kind of scary in my mind now because the thing that I still have a hard time understanding is I don't know how they can give something full approval or what exactly that even means when you look at the
It's
actual clinical trials and
still
what
a
they were
trial.
looking at. And I mean, you can see right down here, this was, and they basically are all finished somewhere between um, estimated completion date May 2nd, 2023.
Right.
So, and most of them are, I think two of them are in 2023 and one of them's, I think, in end of 2022. But again, like they have not finished. I mean, just even if you just get away from, oh, it's been approved or it hasn't been approved, just think how long has this specific intervention been used for? How long did it take to create? And how long has it been on the market being used?
Right.
We have no long-term data. I still have a hard time whenever people say that it's safe. It's been proven to be safe. It's like nothing's been proven. We have like how much time now? Like a year and a half under the belt of it. Normally these things are more like 8 years, even up to 10 years. So
Good point. So I think a lot of the wording sometimes, like when they say that, the Canadian government's constantly saying that, right? There's messages everywhere you look on social media and everything else too. Vaccines are passed through rigorous tests and they're not really lying. Maybe not this one right now because it's not finished. So I understand, because for the longest time, if we looked at the fact that it was saying that it was approved, which they were saying long before even just today, right?
yeah,
So
when it was authorized, when they were saying
under the Emergency Act. So now it's funny that they're changing the names too. It's hilarious. It's hard to keep track of what's going on here with it's absolute madness.
Well, and partly why we wanted to talk about this too is because, I mean, things aren't slowing down; they're amping up, right? Like I said, I've had dozens of emails from patients all emailing me asking what we can do about vaccine exemptions, what we can do about religious exemptions, medical exemptions. Is there a way that they can kind of get out of it? And I just want to share with people from this perspective that for the most part, it's very difficult to get I haven't heard of actually one person yet that's asked their medical doctor if they can get an exemption that's actually been able to get one. I think the criteria for it are very, very minimal. I don't know exactly, but I think from what I understand is it's like after the first injection, if you ended up with myocarditis or if you had severe anaphylaxis, then that would qualify you for a medical exemption. But if not, I don't think you're going to be able to get a medical exemption very, very easily until you've even had the first one to see if you had a reaction to it.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that I think is really important around this is that when you look at what some of the lawyers are talking about that are looking into these things. So let me just pull this up here. And so, for example, one of the main lawyers in Canada that probably a lot of people are familiar with is Rocco Gilati. And he said this, and I just want to read this off because this is where I think we need to start to really think about it. And trust me, I get it. I mean, we're all potentially in the same boat. My feeling is they want to eventually just have mass vaccinations on everybody. So I don't think they're going to stop until they eventually get everybody is going to be mandated to have to get it. So at some point, we are all going to have to make some very difficult decisions. And what Kevin and I have had a lot of talks about, what Tay and I have talked about a lot in different episodes too, is just really connecting to what feels right inside of you and what feels wrong, and then living as much as we can from that place that feels right and living in alignment with that. And then what kind of choices do we have to make if we're really living in alignment with that? I feel like that's where we're at. And Kevin and I are going to talk about that in a little bit more here too, but I just want to read Rocco Gilati's thing. So he says, what he has advised is he's advised that the Supreme Court of Canada has already ruled that any medical treatment, including vaccination, without the informed consent of the individual is unconstitutional. Gilati also states that if your employment is already underway, it is illegal for an employer to impose a new condition not included in the employment contract. If your employer terminates your employment as a result of your decision to refuse this experimental medical treatment, they could be liable for wrongful dismissal or other contract violations. If you sign an employment contract whereby you agree to being vaccinated with the COVID vaccine as a condition of employment, the employer may have the legal right to dismiss you without compensation. It is the view of the Constitutional Rights Center that mandatory vaccination in all employment contexts is illegal, unconstitutional, and unenforceable. If your employment, enrollment, or service is illegally terminated because of your unwillingness to accept the experimental injection, you are advised to sue for wrongful dismissal or violation of contract. We have to stop thinking about getting an exemption to having our constitutional rights violated. We have the constitutional right to refuse a vaccine. those trying to coerce and mandate the vaccine are violating the common law, statutory, and constitutional right. Why seek an exemption from the violators? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And so he was pretty firm on the idea that if we actually gave the employers an exemption, then we're actually saying that we're okay with what they're doing. And we're kind of actually signing up for the fact that we're okay with what they're doing. And what Rocco is saying is that by acquiescing to that, it's actually going to make it a lot more difficult for it to change. And you're actually kind of then signing up to it. And
you're setting precedents for more stuff to come, right?
Well, that's part of it too. Like we talked before. I mean, look what happened in Israel. I mean, you look at Israel, and what they basically show is that the vaccine started to lose its efficacy within about 6 to 7 months. And so now there's going to be talk around boosters. There's already lots of talk about boosters. So I think what people need to be aware of is that if you agree to this, then be aware that you are probably going to be agreeing to further boosters down the road to keep a valid, up-to-date passport.
Like forever.
Yeah. Well, and you were saying in the meeting that you guys had just a little while ago on some of the legalities of stuff about that they were probably going to get you to sign a new contract. So maybe mention what you were meaning by that.
Yeah. So, I was at a small conference on the legality of all this stuff. And obviously Rocco's work was in there. There were 3 other lawyers that were involved with all the data there, with everything from letters to employers. And one interesting fact that I won't bring it up on screen because it's in French, but there was a letter basically from a very large insurance company here in Quebec, and that was stating basically that if you got a transmissible disease, that they were not going to honor your disability or whatever insurance to help you out if you were disabled and you couldn't work. So what they were getting at were some of the legalities that people have, like it's realizing one that, this, like you mentioned, and what Rocco was saying in the briefing, is that it is your right to refuse. It is unlawful. I had a friend today that was here talking to my wife, and she showed me the email from her employer at a health clinic, basically telling them, we are mandating, the government is, we want you, sorry, I want to paraphrase here, but we want you to, due to the law given by the Quebec government, to take the vaccine in order to work in this establishment. I said, well, number one, that's a lie. I go, because it's not a law. I said, so you got to highlight that one right away. And I said, 2, ask them, show them the letter and call your insurance company to get confirmation that they will not be covering you in case you get sick due to this and or any transmissible disease. And then have them sign a letter stating that they will be covering the expenses for all of those insurances due to the fact that you will not be getting them. So, there were all these things basically to help people navigate through there. And like you said, stand up and realize that we have more rights than we think. And, and of course, like if people acquiesce and, oh, well, I'll just do this. I took this one for the team so that, we can move on and get on with this. I like you said, like Israel's a perfect example. It is not going to end there. There will be boosters. They've had several boosters, not just one. And look at the numbers there. So it's we need to see history repeats itself. We need to wake up and see what's coming here and stand up for what we believe in. And I get how difficult this is because it's going to bring us into some uncomfortable situations. This is obviously, even before we got to this point, was creating a bit of a divide. I'm being funny here, but quite the divide amongst the population on at first was, well, why won't you wear a mask? And then now it's gotten to, why won't you get vaccinated? And to it, like, it's all the things that we're actually
considered conspiracy theories when it all came out
Sure.
over a year and a half ago. I remember hearing that right when it first came. It was like, this is moving to this, to this, to this, and then eventually it's going to be vaccine passports if you want to do this, if you want to access this. It's like, we're there. So,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
conspiracy theory come true. But that paper that you were talking about, it wasn't
Yep.
just transmissible disease. It said something about transmissible disease that was
coming from government.
Yeah. What was that part of it? How did it say that?
Okay, hold on. Let me pull it up because then it'll.
Because it basically made it sound. It sounds like they're saying that the insurance company will not be responsible for more or less for illness or injury that takes place from a mandated treatment.
That's right. Yeah, that's why they say provenant du gouvernement. So hold on a sec here. If I go to share this. Okay. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so clearly where it's underlined here, if I kind of translate this as I go, you will not be covered in case of ordinance concerning a transmissible disease coming from government. Provenant du gouvernement. Unbelievable. Like
it's like read the fine words. Yeah. Well, and kind of on line with what we were talking about with ethics, even around all of this. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's been a couple of things that have come up that I think were really interesting to look at, because sometimes also people feel like nothing's happening because you don't always see everything. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's like really, if you're not looking for it, most stuff gets censored. So you don't see a lot of stuff. But I thought this was an important one. Or demonized. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. You either don't hear about it or it gets demonized. But this was from Concordia Professor Speaks Out. And this was a really great one. He basically says it's a statement of non-compliance with mandatory vaccination in Canadian universities. And this professor urges everybody to every university, all profs, to kind of be on the same page, that regardless of whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, it's like, this isn't about being vaccinated or unvaccinated. This is about health freedoms, body sovereignty, our Charter of Rights. I mean, it's a slippery slope. You start to lose some of these things. You don't get them back. Most of the time when they take certain liberties away, they don't always give those things back. And you need to be well aware of what direction do you want to be moving in. So he kind of puts that out as a letter out to all faculty across, saying that we all need to do this together.
It's funny you mentioning that. On that note, I remember a while back listening to someone talking about the lockstep documents from the Rockefeller Foundation. And these documents were from 2010, and they make mention of that in there. Well, number one, what's creepy is that everything's in there. There's a pandemic coming out of China. There's a implement masking. There's it's almost comical. And
well, it's like watching Event 201, all of that stuff. It's like everything was all there before it all happened to kind of talk about it. So
that's right.
If you want a playbook, that's kind of where it is. So
absolutely.
Well, in this one, I don't know if people heard this, but this was, I want to play this because if people haven't heard it, I think that this is really important too. Let me just make sure that I can have it so that the audio is on here as well. Okay.
Did you see all the social media support for her though?
Oh, this video went viral. I mean, it went up on Rumble and it just went crazy. And so this is a Dr. Julie Panesse, professor of ethics, University of Western, and she was basically fired for refusing to get the vaccine, but she's a professor of ethics. So I just want to share this because I think this is really, really powerful, and it's about 5 minutes here. So let's watch this.
My name is Julie Panesse, and this message is about mandatory vaccinations. I am a professor of ethics at Huron College at the University of Western Ontario. It's one of the largest universities in Canada. Today, I'm going to teach you a short lesson on the universally accepted ethics of coercing people into medical procedures. I'll be the example. My employer has just mandated that I must get a vaccine for COVID-19. If I want to keep working at my job as a professor, I have to take this vaccine. Here's my conundrum. My school employs me to be an authority on the subject of ethics. I hold a PhD in ethics and ancient philosophy. And I'm here to tell you it's ethically wrong to coerce someone to take a vaccine. If it happens to you, you don't have to do it. If you don't want a COVID vaccine, don't take one. End of discussion. It's your own business. But that is not the approach of the University of Western Ontario, which has suddenly required that I be vaccinated immediately or not report for work. So with the school year beginning in a few days, I am facing imminent dismissal after 20 years on the job, because I will not submit to having an experimental vaccine injected into my body. I've had plenty of vaccines in my life, but I've never been forced to take one. It's always been my choice. I don't work in a high-risk environment. I'm not a doctor in an emergency room. I'm a teacher. I'm a university professor. My job is to teach students how to think critically, to ask questions that might expose a false argument. Questions like, says who? Who is the authority giving this order? Should I trust them with control over my body? As a professor, I don't have to watch the news to find out if the COVID vaccines are safe. I read medical journals, and I consult my colleagues who are professors of science and medicine. I've learned from doctors that there are serious questions about how safe these vaccines really are. There are questions about how well they work. Nobody's promising that I won't get COVID or transmit COVID if I get the vaccine. But ultimately, none of that matters to me, because I'm a professor of ethics and I'm a Canadian. I'm entitled to make choices about what does and does not enter my body, regardless of my reasons. If I'm allowed back into my university, it's my job to teach my students that this is wrong. I'm hired to teach them that it is ethically wrong to impose an experimental medical procedure as a condition of employment. This is my first and potentially my last lesson of the year. Ethics 101. In the spirit of Socrates, who was executed for asking questions, this lesson will consist of only one question. The answer is multiple choice. Please listen carefully. When a person has done the same job to the satisfaction of her employer for 20 years, is it right or is it wrong to suddenly demand that they submit to an unnecessary medical procedure in order to keep their job? In this case, the procedure is an injection of a substance that has not been fully tested for safety. It has not yet been shown to be effective. It is designed to prevent an illness that poses little threat to the employee. The employee is not allowed to ask questions. She may only submit to the procedure or be fired. To my first year students, is this right or is this wrong? I already know the answer.
That was amazing, Julie.
Sorry. Sorry.
Now, I thought that was pretty powerful when I first saw that. I'm not certain exactly what's gone on, but I think actually some stuff, I think Western actually backtracked a little bit, backpedaled a little bit once that went viral. And I don't know for sure. I'd have to check it out, but I've heard that then she's on leave, but I think she might be on paid leave now because of what's gone on. So, which would be amazing, right? I just think that's like, to me, I hear stuff like that and it's like, that's pretty clear. And I'm not trying to convince anybody to do anything. What I want people to do is I want them, if that doesn't feel right, if what is going on does not feel right for you, that's all that you need to connect with.
We constitutionally have that right. That's what it is. It has, we're not trying to take sides of do this, do that. That we should have a choice, and it is unbelievable. That was such a good. I had heard it, and I don't think I went right to the end.
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
I didn't see her break down. Oh wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and so, like we're saying, it's like if something inside of you doesn't feel good with this, like this is the time. We need to figure out how to actually, well, we all need to kind of figure out where we stand on everything. And then we have to start to make choices. And we're all getting pushed to make very quick choices. A lot of times I think quicker than we would like to, because we're not getting enough. It's happening very quick. Yeah. And I honestly feel like in some ways it's like it's designed to be like that, because people then can't think straight. They're under pressure. And we often do not want to make choices when we are stressed and under pressure. It's not a good place. This is where I would do stuff to try to get the nervous system to settle back down, connect genuinely with what feels right in your heart and in your gut, and then listen to that place. And then we got to all have a certain degree of faith that things are going to move in certain directions. I mean, I know that's a lot to ask for people, because I get it. It's like we're talking about our jobs. We're talking about finances. We've all got families. Trust me, there are a lot of people in the same boat around this.
A lot of uncomfortable situations, like a lot of uncomfortable decisions revolving around all those things you mentioned. And it's funny about what was David Icke saying about, was it Wetico?
Oh, Wetico. Yeah.
Wetico. But that's when it gets exposed, right? You see how much it starts to grasp at the straws to stay alive. And that's what's going on right now. And if people start to realize that, and really know and realize how much power we do have, and how much, if we honor that feeling and that knowingness that we have of something being right and stand up for that, listen, like we've made choices, Jay. Like my kids are being homeschooled right now. Like I work, we've talked about that situation too. Like, it's leading to a point where, and I guess I potentially won't be treating people live in person. So I've made decisions to do something else on more of a digital platform that, to help people in a different way. And to be honest, if I really think about it, life is absolutely beautiful, because, this situation is providing an opportunity for me to do something that I've always wanted to do, but never got to it. So it's almost, I'm grateful, like it really is. And I'm sure, I know we've talked tons, and same thing for you, so like, I really hope sincerely that people listening will view it in this way and say, what can I do? What changes do I want to make for me, for my family, to live potentially differently, to be able to do what we want to do, and be okay with that decision, and if this is something that you don't want to do, you're definitely not alone. And there are solutions. It's just thinking outside the box on what are some steps you can take to do that. That's all.
Well, and there's communities too. Since we've been out here, there's communities in BC, there's communities in Ontario. I can guarantee you there will be communities every country around listening to this. You will find different communities. So there's different groups on different platforms, whether that be Telegram or even Facebook for certain things, if you can connect with it, if they haven't been censored. But there's one that Tay and I are part of, and it's got, what's it got, like about 120,000 people now, and it's businesses against the mandations around the vaccine. So they are connecting. And so what you're finding is, like, now there's teachers because teachers just recently were on the block now too, where they're going to have to be mandated for vaccines too. So if they don't want to do that, what you're seeing is a bunch of them that are actually stepping out of the system. They're saying, well, no, I'm not going to do that. So now they've put themselves out to these communities saying, I'm open. And you're talking to a community of people that gets you. So now you're actually seeing these teachers going and supporting these homeschool programs that want to happen now. So parents like ourselves are connecting with other families. We're getting kids together, and we are now getting a teacher in and having a very, and actually, I think they're going to get a really incredible education because it's going to be much more geared for those kids, and it'll be much more attention, less stress, everything. So you can still create things in a very different way. And so that kind of brings me to thinking about the schools too, because I think this is a really important one I want to touch on quickly as well.
Yeah.
And so, like, just so people know, I mean, this is in Ontario, but this is going to be happening everywhere in Canada pretty soon. And Ontario to run school-based COVID-19 vaccine clinics as academic year begins. So at any point in time, within probably these next few weeks, they've said straight out that COVID-19 immunization clinics will run in Ontario schools in nearby locations as the academic year begins. The province announced Monday in a bid to reach unvaccinated youth who are set to gather in classrooms next month. So if you're not okay with that, like if that doesn't feel good for you, if there's something that feels uncomfortable for you about letting your kids go into the school, because you need to remember too, like we sign certain forms because I have a stepson who's turning 17 soon. And so we actually sign these forms that you can get from standforthee.com. And there's a lot of different sites, Canada Health Alliance, they've got some good information there that you can get for lots of forms and legal information that you can look at. I'll put the links to those in the show notes so people can have some of those things to check out. Yeah. But one of the forms was basically sending it to the principal saying, you know, I do not consent for my child to be talked about with vaccines or all of this sort of stuff if people were scared. But, you know, we sent that to the principal and then we got a letter back. And essentially it's like, I don't think they actually do anything. The reality is that if your child is 12 or above, they do not need parental consent to get it. So I don't necessarily think that someone's going to come and take your child and haul them off and inject them. But I absolutely could see it being just a very commonplace thing that's like, okay, the clinic's here, everybody line up, let's go chat it, let's go over there. If you haven't had it, come over here. And it could very easily just happen before the child even totally gets what took place or just felt the peer pressure and didn't want to sort of step out. That can be really, really hard. It's hard enough as an adult to not go with the flow. I mean, look at what's going on currently. Well, so for our kids, I think if you're not comfortable with that, then you need to make a decision on, do you want them in that environment?
Yeah, good point. Because I can remember way before even this happened, right? Just my kids being in school and then those days where, oh, today's the shot day, you know, and whether it was for HPV or whatever it was. And I can remember one instance where, you know, my daughters didn't take it, and kids coming up to them saying like, why wouldn't you do this? You know, if you don't do it, you could die, you know, like for kids don't get what, you know, they're not obviously doing any research, but so that the issue with the shaming and the bullying around these types of things, imagine now the context of now with the magnitude of brainwashing going on. We've had instances last year where we literally had to write a letter to the school saying, you know, it is not your place to be discussing what a person should be doing with their body. You shouldn't be asking like, oh, are your parents getting vaccinated? And if they are, do they plan on vaccinating you? Like, what? Like, what are you doing? A survey? Like this doesn't make any sense. So back to the changes and solutions we can come to, you know, like, so that for us was the red flag of like, you know what, if there is not a drastic change in what's going on, they are out. And listen, and honestly, it does take a bit of work. I understand it's not easy for everyone to make that type of decision. I can't tell you the relief I feel right now having my kids here, and also, you know, contributing more in what they're learning is amazing. And I have to say, the change between the end of last year, where my kids were coming home exhausted from being masked all day, to now is enough for me to warrant the sacrifice, for which is very little, to be honest. Like, you know, there are so many platforms out there that can help people. Like Jay, you mentioned, you know, like there are so many teachers that are either retired and or don't believe in the insanity that's going on right now. Like, and they're offering service to families to get together and do community stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
we've connected with different ones on our own, but this, even for people that are worried about their job, right? Because I get that. And I ultimately think there's a lot of stuff that's going to go crashing down, and there's going to be a lot of lawsuits. And I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to change after this. So I really want people that are not wanting to do it and don't feel okay with it inside themselves. I want them to honor that as best as they can and hold steady, because I really do think things are going to change around on the other side at some point.
That will catalyst that.
But the other part is not, but the other part is like, it's not just sort of like hoping for the best or getting caught up in like, oh my God, my life's going to get over. It's the difference between then actively moving towards what it is that you're wanting to do. You know, when you find groups like this, where you've got like 110,000 people all, and this is a really powerful connection, because these people are very supportive for each other. Someone puts something out and it's like, I see it shared like 1,000 times. And these people are wanting to support this community. So if you have a service, that's your community that you want to connect with. And you might find something completely different or even similar, but with a different group, totally opens up for you if you just look into it and sort of step into that direction. I mean, I can't say enough that like our life constantly improves the more that we stay in alignment with what really genuinely feels right in our heart and our gut, even when it triggers so much potential change and shift that stirs up lots of potential worries and fears. But there's less and less of that the more that you keep doing it. You just kind of find that a lot of our fears are much more illusionary. It's not that there's not some reality to them, but I think if we're connected to that, stuff just opens up. You find different people. All of a sudden there's another opening for something else. Another person happens to pop into your life that's going to help you with that you can afford, that fits the right gap, or some kind of a barter or whatever it's going to be that opens up to help you with the bit of time you need with your kids or whatever it is. Like I just find that stuff just keeps kind of falling into as we stay on track, and it's not something that you can plan months and months down the road. It's really trying to be in connection with that inner voice. That, I don't mean to sound too metaphysical here, but it's like, it really is feeling this connection to that sort of source connection, that inner guidance, so that you're able to pivot faster, well, and when things change, you can shift and move.
I think we should get metaphysical.
Yeah, exactly.
If we did, right? So no, I completely agree. That for us too is and we've seen it with all the different decisions that we've made, right? I think what you're saying is to really trust in the divine intervention there. Like if you really go with what your gut is telling you and what we really believe is true in your heart, what the universe provides for you is unbelievable. Like the ease in that is a lot better. And, we've done the opposite too, where, the school thing for us, it wasn't exactly like, oh yeah, the next day, bang, like the school year ended. The whole summer we were kind of like, okay, so where's this going? We had been talking with you guys too a lot. And, deep down, I knew what the decision needed to be. And what my fear was not so much the, holy crap, what were you going to do if we homeschooled them? Was just the experience for my kids, is taking them out of that context going to be beneficial for them? But then when you think about it and we talk to them and we explain too that, like, listen, in a day, you're going to maybe spend a couple hours doing work that you would take 8 hours at school, And then you can do music, and you can work on my two older ones are trying to write a novel. Like, like these are things they would not have time for, and these are all creative things that they can own in on now that are going to, in my opinion, make them grow as people, greater people. And what more do you want for your kids?
Yeah, right? I think it's like, it initially, because it's such a different, it's so different from what we're familiar with. So that always lights up challenge, and it lights up a lot of fears. And then we usually want to cling back to what we are most familiar with, regardless of whether it's actually best or not. It's just familiar. And we feel security around what's familiar. But what I'm constantly surprised by is that when we have the sort of willingness and the courage to explore the unfamiliar, more times than not, it's not so scary. It actually is very rewarding. And when we actively seek it out with the intention of clearly knowing, like, I mean, what my wife and I will constantly be sort of saying, as we're just walking, especially when we're in a really good place, like when we feel really calm and really centered, that's where we'll often spontaneously have these conversations too, because I feel like in a certain vibrational frequency, you will see that stuff will actually impact your reality. That's the whole series. We're putting a new series together starting in October 4th, I think. That's going to be, I think, a 15-part on energy, vibration, frequency, magnetics, the next era of healthcare. But you're going to see how these things directly affect outcomes. And we'll talk about that and just sort of explore with imagination around what kind of school would we want for our girls? What kind of school do we want? What's that going to look like? And we just talk about it in a playful, fun, open way. And I'm not joking, like within then the next day, it's like, the lady comes over that we just met a little while back, and she's like, oh, I have a friend who does this and this, and she does this for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 days a week. And is like, of course you do, because we literally just put it out there. And I mean, that stuff happens, but I think it happens when we're in a place of being more connected to what that feels like inside the heart and in the gut, and not so much wrapped up in the thinking process, which is usually tied into lots more fears around stuff.
Sure.
So I'm not saying you abandon all that stuff, but it's like, it's this nice bridge between the brain and the heart, I think.
Yeah, you need to be able to detach from it, right? And not be, twirling around in the storm of it, because so, obviously, that requires some practice in terms of, hence the copious amounts of meditation we're doing these days. And, so I really think people have I only hope for people, if they can get in a good practice like that and really try and center themselves more on what they need and what they want, and how they want to move forward with that. That noise becomes a little bit less loud. One, two, the impact on you and how you're reacting to it is less volatile. So the benefits of that, I think, and so I look forward to even listening again to this next series, because I think this could be of a huge benefit to people moving forward with all this, like many of the other ones that you've done, obviously, but this I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, in meditation and mindfulness practice, I think, like you said, it's like you get better with creating that space. So there's less sort of reactivity. There's more response. There's more connection in the choices that we make. And, even meditation itself, when people haven't done it, when you first do it, it's not, it's kind of chaotic in your brain.
Sure.
even the sitting practice originally was uncomfortable. I remember getting like lots of back pain when I first started doing it. But part of it on a bigger picture is that you learn to sit with discomfort in a different way. You literally sit with a physical discomfort, which is sort of a representation of the mental, emotional discomfort that we go through in life. And you start to have more ability to stay longer with these things without them riling you. And eventually they actually don't even hurt anymore. It's really fascinating. So there's lots of different ways to incorporate that type of a practice, but whether that's just walking in nature, whether that's formal meditation, whether that's holding a thought in mind and then, contemplating that throughout the day, there's lots of different ways to do it. But
just breathing technique, things like that. It's creating spiritual resiliency, right?
Yeah, I like that, spiritual resiliency. And Yeah, so important. And so when you're getting these places of making these decisions, this is an exercise that we do a lot, is when I'm making a decision, especially if it's a really important decision, I will never make my final answer when I'm in a state of stress or
Yeah.
overwhelm or fear. I will, even go to the website on drjasonloken.com, and there's a free download. I think it's called Accessing the Heart's Wisdom. And it takes you through a heart math or a heart rate variability exercise where you go through, you get into a certain physiological state, and then you actually ask specific questions where you are connected to a deeper sense of intuition. Those are good practices to do because you often get very different answers when you're asking yourself a question when you're all stressed out and hyped up versus when you're in a very solid, grounded place where you connect to heart intelligence in a different way. So, it's just a free download. Go check it out. I'll try and put the link in the show notes here for it too.
Absolutely.
But any last words? Any last words, Kevin?
Listen, I think it's to summarize a bit what we were talking about this whole time was we really understand the difficulty behind some of these decisions and owning that truth. I can only tell you that the more you do, the more you stay with it, and know too that there's so many more people around you that feel the same way. Go out and look for these communities, like Jason said, that he's going to put in the show notes and stuff like that. Start talking to people that are open to this and are thinking critically and do have other ideas that might help you out in your decision making. And really, if you can, like I could strongly suggest having a practice, whether you're, journaling to meditation to all of the above, can be such a tremendous help at guiding you into having a more clear vision of what it is that you truly want and how it's going to manifest itself. So I really think this is the time that is challenging us to really dive into this, because it's going to lead to something beautiful on the other side.
Yeah, I so agree with you, Kevin. I'll put a link to a YouTube live I did just the other day where I talked about after doing one of the tracks from Oracle Girl called Standing Up, and it really reminded me of an experience I had about 10 years ago, specifically watching this one older lady. She was in her 70s, this older grandmother, and just how she got to this place of inner power and what that was like. And we all need to be able to get to that place where we just have a line that will not be crossed, and we sort of sit in our sovereignty and we sit in that place of power. And it's a really freeing feeling when we do that. And most people are not comfortable with confrontation. I think particularly even as Canadians, we're very much not very confrontational, but I feel like we have a bit of I think we honestly have a moral responsibility to stand up against bullies and to stand up against things that are unlawful. And if you feel that way, I'm not trying to convince anybody that doesn't, but if that is how you are feeling and that that's how it feels inside yourself, then this is the time. So let's all pull together and let's do this together. Kevin, my friend, thank you so much for joining us. I'll put your info on the show link. I'll put your info in the show notes there too, so you know how to get a hold of Kevin. And guys, stay tuned for the amazing series that's going to be coming up. We've got some really amazing guests. I'm going to put out the poster on that probably within the next week, so you guys will see who's coming up, but it's a pretty stellar lineup. So all right guys, take care. We love you lots.